My name's Louis Oriash. I'm a British designer currently living in Sydney. I've been here for about 18 months, and I currently work at a small startup which is social media focused, and we work with the hospitality industry mainly. And I've been around the block a little bit. I've worked in charity. I've worked for publishers. I've worked for e-commerce companies. But I've most of the time been working solo. So my exposure to the best practices or anything like that have strictly been self-taught, and it's very interesting to have a conversation with you guys to see what you guys have been taught, really, because I think you're probably a bit better trained than I am.
Arguable. We'll get into it.
Yeah.
All right, Martha, maybe talk about yourself a little bit.
Yeah,
Tell us about your
sure.
past history. Did you go to school? Where you're at right now?
I'm currently a UI UX designer at CBRE in Seattle, Washington. So I build internal tools for our brokers. So I work in corporate real estate at the moment. And I've only been in this industry for a year and a half now. So this is still all very new to me. I went to school briefly. I went to Maryland Institute College of Art for a few semesters, but I did not finish. I ended up dropping out. College dropout, actually 2-time college dropout. I tried to go back, and I ended up leaving again, right? That's persistence, though.
You have a better story than Kanye West.
Oh, yeah. Well, hey, I think it worked out okay.
So you're very fresh in the industry then, and you've probably had, given the company you work for is big, you probably had quite the exposure to maybe legacy practices and people doing stuff a really certain way. And I'd be curious to understand how you've had to adapt your semi-trained skill set to fit into a really corporate-ish culture.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm lucky in a way that the group that I'm a part of, we're actually sort of under CBRE. We're sort of our own little subgroup called CBRE Dev. So we're pretty much sectioned off from all the rest of CBRE, which helps as far as that stuff goes. So we don't have as many corporate things kind of bearing down on us. However, there have been a few things that I've been like, I mean, it just comes with working with a bunch of people for the first time, because I've done an internship before I graduated high school, but that was at a very small company in Athens, Georgia. So it's a bit of a different environment, and working with developers who are actually producing what you're designing instead of just designing things for classwork or for yourself, it definitely brings a different tone to it. So I would say that's the biggest difference for me as far as what I've learned. I don't know if it's necessarily specifically CBRE related, but yeah.
Well, it's always good to work on projects that are actually real in an internship. Yeah. I think a lot of the time people get given the lighter work to do, and that can be obviously good because you get to learn about how business works, but for things like portfolio development and anything like that, you really need to be working with real people on real projects, and it sounds like that's what you had.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, my first few months, obviously, not to blame them for it because it makes sense. I was very new. They didn't give me super, super exciting things that ended up being built. I did like some things for social media and built things for internal team stuff. But recently, I've been building, major features from start to finish, which is something that I don't know if a lot of people in my position of being only in the industry for such a short amount of time would be doing. So I feel very lucky that I have that opportunity.
You've also been working on a style guide, haven't you? Or just design system of subscription.
Yeah, so we have some internal design systems, and I also have my own personal design system that I use for everything. And that I found an interesting, as well, just working between my own system versus working collaboratively with a team on one larger system that we all work from.
When you said personal design system, that sounded like you had this platform for life that you were modularizing your life and designing your life on the system.
Wouldn't that be nice?
I was a little bit lost there for a second. Sorry, we'll carry on.
Yeah. So I got a really quick question for you, Martha. What was one of the biggest things that you think surprised you when you first started working with devs? Because I think that it's kind of different for everybody, because every team dynamic is a little bit different. Every even bigger, Fortune 100 companies, they all kind of work quite a bit different. So I'm kind of curious where you were surprised by that whole relationship between designer and coder.
Yeah, so it's kind of changed over the time that I've been there. And initially, it was a very, very small team. I think when I started, there was maybe 12 people on the team, 13, and now there's 40. So the dynamic has definitely changed a lot. And initially, I was working, honestly, I was working more with my my design director rather than the developers directly. But I think as time has gone on and as they've trusted me more, as I've shown that I can produce things that are actually usable and functional and still beautiful, I think.
Yeah.
Now I've been able.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, now I'm assigned to a specific dev team. So we all work in different teams, and every team has a designer that's assigned to it. So I build things for the team, but I also assist with any like day-to-day questions that they may have.
Yeah. It's always interesting to me too when I first talk to designers that are kind of coming into the field, is they don't realize that they have to do that whole Karate Kid moment where you're sitting there and you're like just polishing the crap out of this car, or painting this fence, and it just sounds so pointless and meaningless. And sometimes it is. Don't get me wrong. I've had those jobs where I've sat there and I've pretty much kind of put in work, and it was kind of like meaningless work. But then there's other people that are very intentional, and so they'll give you tasks where they're kind of feeling you out. Are you more of an illustrator? Are you more of a app designer? Are you more UX? Are you more UI? Depending on what company you're at. So it's really interesting that it's not always, like, oh, we're shipping an app today. It's like this massive celebration, which I think people, going into startups kind of think that it's just like one ongoing party that you're not going to sit there and have to, push out like, 20, 30 banners, in a week sometimes.
Yep. Literally have done just that.
Hey, banner design is fun.
Yeah, it definitely can be. I mean, it's all designed to, it's like, if you look at it from the perspective that you're going to learn and grow from every single project that you work on, it's never wasted time, like as long as it has to do with actual design, right? That somebody's not like, hey, you have to design to this exact template and it's basically like a PowerPoint or something. In that case, that might be a little bit limiting. But for the most part, I've found that in most of my jobs, every single time I can kind of pull something out and say, hey, I learned this new shortcut key, or hey, I learned how to set up a grid very quickly, or hey, I learned how to use a different kind of grid this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's always something you can pull from what you're doing, hopefully, that you can use in the future as well. I think that's a very good point.
Just on that topic of you saying you're always curious to find and discover new shortcuts and ways of doing things. Do you ever share that information, or is there a platform where you feel like people should be sharing this information, or is it something you'd happily just keep to yourself and dictate your own processes that way?
That's a great question. I've tried to share it on a few different places. So I'm one of those people that forever have started and never finished projects. So I've kind of made it a goal to kind of start and finish stuff right now. So
this podcast being one of them. Yeah, absolutely. So I have tried like websites like
Learn a Shortcut Every Day, or shortcuteveryday.com. Yeah, that's what it was.
Right.
And I even got a like WordPress template set up. I got it all designed. I got it coded, and then I just like started working on other stuff. So I was like, I don't really have time to share this, shortcut. And then I started sharing it on Instagram, so I could go on there and be like, hey, I kind of learned how to do this crazy new wavy effect in Cinema 4D, and like here's a really quick tutorial. But the problem with like Instagram is you can't get into the nitty gritty. In order to like really get into the nitty gritty, you have to be an influencer, which means you have like 10,000 followers or something. And then you can add, like a quick little teaser video in your Instagram story, and then a swipe up to go to the actual tutorial. Then you can kind of, actually consume it. But as far as like content and platforms, I feel like we're really lacking. I've tried to use Twitter. I feel like I just don't really get a lot of traction, and maybe I'm using it wrong, or maybe I'm not posting enough at the right times. I'm not really sure, but I've had way more luck with Instagram. So like just putting the time into things that are a little bit hotter right now tend to be a little bit better of a return. But long story short, I don't think that there's a really great platform that I know of. But
how about you, Martha? Do you post anywhere all your work?
Yeah, so I'm actually currently redoing my entire portfolio, and that's sort of a base level for me, getting my presence online sort of rebooted. But I have sort of dabbled with Instagram. I feel like when I was doing bullet journaling for a short amount of time, and I was posting on Instagram almost every day doing that, and that was getting a lot more traction than I've seen other short little projects that I've picked up getting. So I think that's probably where I would go currently. But again, it's like Wu said, there's definitely some problems as far as going into details on process and actually showing how something got somewhere and teaching things, because you don't have that much time to show anything. So I definitely feel that struggle as well. It'd be cool if we had some way to as creatives share that. And there's things like Skillshare.
A lot of people would,
I
guess a lot of people would point you in the direction of Dribble, but then Dribble's turned into something different to what I guess the outcomes were supposed to be. And it can feel like you could just get lost in it.
Yeah,
or just focusing on certain trends or certain looks.
Yeah, that's exactly. It seems like to do well on Dribble, you need to kind of adhere to a specific style, and and I definitely see things that go outside of that style on front page and stuff, but it's pretty rare. I don't know. It's sort of discouraging in some ways, but...
You know what my philosophy on this is? And you guys can maybe weigh in on this and see what you think, but I'm one of those people that I've gotten to the point where I just stopped caring. I don't care. I'm just going to put it out there. If I'm inspired to like help somebody and be like, here's how I made this thing, then I just make it. If I want to like go out and just like tell people what kind of renderer I'm using, or like that I switched over to like a monthly subscription or something like that versus like the crazy like $2,000 that you have to pay normally for them. Like I'll go and share those things with people, and I don't really care if it gets any response from people. Like I tend to like really throw myself at those things. Like I don't really like... I tend to not like half-ass them, like I'll throw everything I have into them, and they tend to turn out better. And because of that, more naturally, people tend to gravitate towards those. If you just like keep putting content out there and you're very unique, like I feel like the people are bound to come to you. But I'm curious what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree, but there's definitely some factors in there. I think the most important thing is posting a lot and posting maybe the right things, because it seems like maybe it's more important the tags. Maybe that's all it is. Maybe it's the ability for people to find your work as the most important aspect of it. But I'm not sure. I would agree that there's definitely things that you can do to make it a lot bigger of a chance to get more people to follow you. But at the end of the day, like I used to be really involved in the Twitch scene on twitch.tv back before it was actually Twitch. And it's always interesting because I've seen a lot of streamers that stream every day, and they stream for 5 hours every day, but they never get more than five viewers at a time, or maybe 20, but they never break that barrier, I guess.
Yeah,
that is a real dedication.
Oh yeah, it takes persistence. I mean, some people that do that for a year, all of a sudden will become really popular. But there's people that I know that have been doing it for 4 years that still just don't have that much of a following on that website. So, I do. What I'm saying is, I do agree that you can have a big influence on it as far as what you do, but it does, involve some other aspects as well.
Yeah. The point I think I would probably always hark back to is that having a following really doesn't mean very much. If you have a passion for the work and keep continuing to do what you want to do, the followers are just a byproduct of that, and it's about being proud about what you want to do. And maybe we don't even need these accounts. I have a Dribble account. I've never posted on it because I'm too scared that it's going to get rejected. It's going to get 0 likes, going to get 0 shares, whatever. I'm too scared to enter that realm.
Oh, you got to do it.
Fail.
Yeah, maybe that's what we all need to stop avoiding and stop being scared about. Because that limitation can hinder you more than it helps you, I think, at the end of the day.
Today, you're going to take a Dribble shot, and you're going to post it, and you're going to like it. Just kidding.
The whole celebritization of designers is something I feel very strongly about.
Yeah, it's so strange.
It's difficult to not want to get involved. I'm a heavy Twitter user.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I use it because I get new contacts. My network expands. I get inspiration from it. I find comedy on it. But at the same time, I don't know whether I'm using it to also build my own profile. I think I am. I don't know.
Sure.
Add another channel to that list of things you need to sustain. Feels like a waiting to happen.
Yeah, it's absolutely so hard to balance all that stuff. In fact, I was talking to one of the guys in our chat, which is uniteddesigners.chat. If you guys go to that, www.uniteddesigners.chat, we kind of all just like hang out there and we kind of chit chat, we critique each other's work, we post inspirational work, stuff like that. But one of the guys in the chat, we were talking about specifically, oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought. I was thinking about the chat.
That's how you two met, isn't it, on that chat?
Yeah, that's how we all met.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I think I came in like a year ago or something like that. And Martha was in there for probably a year before me, right?
Yeah, I've been there maybe a year and a half. I've been there for longer than my current job, which is kind of fun.
Well,
Sure.
Yeah.
You should be getting paid for it.
So I remembered what I was talking about. So we were talking about automating these posts to all the different things. So one of my problems is that I start consistently posting on one medium and then I never end up posting to all of them. So I was thinking about what I could do, and I thought about the if this then that kind of thing that he was doing, along with the other one that ended up costing money. But I was thinking about
Zapier, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yep, that's what it was. Yeah, and I thought about using it, but I was just like, one, I think you take a hit if you do it through automated services, which is not great. But if it can get you to post stuff on places that you don't normally post, and you like that kind of stuff, I think it makes sense to do it that way. But my problem is that I just don't have the time sometimes to just post stuff. I have work from 2 years ago that I've never even posted, and pretty decently big jobs. I just don't have the time to post on Instagram or all these different places. So it can definitely be really tricky to find the time to be able to post that and to post it in a meaningful way. Speaking of which, I want to throw it back to what we were talking about earlier. I think that this is super duper interesting, and I think that this is a super hard question. You guys were talking about just doing the things that you love. If money was not an option, somebody was just you could live off of this, you could live comfortably, whatever life you wanted to do, what thing would you guys do?
I mean, for me, for why I chose what I do now and why I've been interested in this since I was 12. I learned Photoshop when I was that age, just doing really silly online tutorials.
So design specifically, or just art?
Yeah. Design specifically. I used to design posters for, events around my school, and I used to design, there used to be this little thing online where you would go and generate an album title from a Wikipedia article, an album or an artist name from another thing, and an image from Flickr or something, and you would have to put it together to make an album art out of it that was cohesive. And I used to just do that for fun, and it came out with some really silly ones, but
I would love to see these.
Oh God!
Yeah, you gotta dig those up.
12-year-old master's designs.
Oh Lord! Yeah, so that was fun, but I feel like doing things like that has been extraordinarily helpful. Sure. I'm sorry, I don't really remember your question. I got kind of sidetracked thinking about that.
That's okay, but what specifically do you love about what you do?
Right.
For me, for example, recently I've found that helping others is really awesome. Being able to give back to other people, and I'm doing that through mentoring people specifically right now. I want to expand it a little bit further, but that's been my drive is to do that, plus someday open a dojo or something. But that one's super crazy and far out there. But what deeper thing kind of drives you to do what you do?
I think it's being able to make something every day. So that to me has, I know it's #deep, but being able to know that you're contributing to the world in some way or another. And I feel like the thing that humans can do for that the most, in my opinion, is to create. So whether that's creating art, creating buildings, creating written work. And I feel like creating design, there's just so many elements to it that make it a really interesting thing to create.
Yeah.
I'd like to touch on something you just said about
Sure.
designers giving back to the world. It's something I've been thinking a lot about recently, in that if we treat our practice as that, then do we not end up having to judge how valuable your design is compared to someone working at a charity, for example? Are they doing better design work because they're helping more people than someone who works at a bank, for instance? How do you feel about that as a dilemma?
I think it entirely depends on what your definition of better is.
Yeah.
I think if it's better, if they're helping the world in a more significant way, I feel like definitely. But it's also like, do you from just a visual standpoint, I guess it's a question like, does a building that holds an elementary school that's been around for 70 years that needs to be renovated, is that building somehow better than like, a beautiful architectural piece that only holds one family? Which is a better design, right? The one that actually is useful and functional and helps society, or the one that is aesthetically beautiful and really thought out and really intricate?
Yeah. I'm just wondering whether, with our inherent nature of wanting to solve problems and help people, should we always be focusing on channeling that to do-gooding, or should we be conscious that we need to earn a living and we can go and get a job that doesn't necessarily affect people in a positive way, but like designing for gambling, for example. That's for me is a dichotomy, in that you're producing work that helps people but can also not help people, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I feel like morally, I don't know if I would be okay with doing that, but I also have fairly strong convictions. I mean, what I do now isn't exactly... I think what I do is helpful for the people that I do it for, but it's not exactly a broad thing that helps a lot of people. So, and that's actually something I think about, is there something I could be doing that would be more helpful? But then again, there's that other side of me that's like, well, at my stage in my career, I'm really lucky to be where I am, and I should stay here for a little bit longer, and I should focus on that. So I definitely feel like that's a struggle that a lot of designers probably feel.
Back to your question, Wu, as my response would be that design allows me to look at life generally in a different way. In that I approach every single challenge in life from a design point of view, and how can I manage that problem and how can I get a solution from that. And I hate the word empathy, but us doing what we do allows us to look at things in a certain way and come up with creative solutions to problems that some people probably wouldn't be able to do because they think in a different way.
Why do you hate the word empathy?
Because it's a buzzword at the moment. Everyone's talking about it.
Sure. I think that it can be good, but yeah, I definitely agree that it can be kind of overused or misunderstood and used in a way that's kind of like ammo versus, more of a protective glass, I guess.
I feel like I'm probably guilty of using it as ammo. Talking to developers sometimes.
We love them.
Well, because I also think that everybody should be empathetic. That's the problem.
Yeah, and like at the end of the day, we all want to make sure, or my goal is to make sure that the app is the best it can possibly be, or what we work on is the best it can possibly be. So if I have to kind of weasel my way through a developer to get it to be where I think and other designers on my team and project managers think it should be, then I will do that.
Nice.
Just wondering whether we should switch the conversation up a little bit to talk about your passions. The way that we brought this discussion up recently was that you were really keen to have a discussion about colors and how you approach color as theory in a practice. And I don't know how you'd want to shape that conversation, but there's a lot we could talk about. A lot we could go into.
That was actually literally, I was just about to say the exact same thing, so I'm glad we're on the same wavelength. But one thing that I'm really curious about, I love using certain kinds of tools like Cooler to be able to see colors better, because I'm pretty sure that I'm colorblind in a certain spectrum, like purples and blues don't really make any sense to me, and it's really hard to tell the difference. So I use Cooler specifically because I know that that's like a crutch of mine, so I'll use that tool. So I'm curious, Martha, if you have any things like that, like you use a certain tool to create color palettes because, it like helps you to do this thing or it helps you to do this other thing.
Yeah, so my history with color is fairly long. I used to do, you know the website Color Lovers? That I used to be on that in high school classes all the time. I think I've made almost 1,000 palettes on that website. I think literally it's like 940 something. So that I feel like is a brute force way of getting it so you don't really need to learn any other tools, because you just kind of get a really good hang of how to put colors together. And at this stage, what I do typically is I'll pull it into Illustrator or Figma, or you could do Sketch, whatever, and I'll usually come up with a few base colors and then do tones based on that color. And, I'll think of some basic elements like, okay, if I want to do a blue primary color, I should probably do an orange accent color because of the complementary colors. And you can just build based on that. But I feel like if you need something to start off of, more so than looking up other color palettes, but grabbing inspiration from nature, or grabbing inspiration from photos that you think are really stunning or have a lot of contrast that you want to capture. And then
just
grabbing from those.
You said that you've mentioned two very specific things there, in that you get your colors and then you sort of get different variations of those, and then you also mentioned things about complementary colors. Do you treat color as a science, or do you also get a feel as well?
I think the science of it does help you get the feel. I think they're kind of interchangeable. I feel like, I guess then it's the science of it, but I feel like the science of it dictates how it feels. So like if you wanted to do something with a more cool tone, then you would use more of a cool tone, or I guess more of if you wanted more of a clean look, something a little bit more modern, then you could probably go for more of a cool tone, and you could use that for your gray tones and use that for your tonality if you needed to do lighter colors or darker colors. But then again, you can do something more warm if you need something more homey, or if it's something, a little bit more grounded, then you can do, and you can just start from there. And I think, and I'm not sure if the science of how humans perceive warm light versus cool light, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure there's a science to that, and I know that people work under cooler light better. But yeah, I think there's a science to it, and I feel like if you take that into consideration when you're building applications or building websites, thinking about who's it for, what's the purpose of this website, and then choosing your color palette based on that, is definitely very helpful.
You clearly have a lot of expertise in the field. So it would be the way I'm trying to shape this is what advice would you give to someone who doesn't have that information yet, and how do they get to the point where they immediately know, hey, I want this to feel like this, and I need to use these colors to get to that point?
Sure. Again, I would look at a lot of things like pictures and things like, think about movies that you really like that get a tone across in a certain scene, and just pause it on that scene and look at it. And why do you feel that way looking at that thing? What colors are on the screen that are making you feel that way? Or, again, if looking at pictures that you really think are stunning, or even other work that you think, you're like, oh, I see that Facebook uses a blue color palette, dig into that and ask and see why. And again, I feel like going to things like Color Lovers or things like Cooler does help you a lot, because you can sift through a lot of color palettes, and then you can just see until you find something that kind of matches the tonality of what you're going for.
And do you have to feel like you give people this advice at work? Because the way I always think about color and things like that is, when people give you a presentation to work on, for example, that's the first instance you can see when a non-designer has approached a design problem. In that the colors will be all over the place. There'll be like fluorescent yellows and greens and stuff. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that you need to be educating people who aren't designers about how to approach this problem? Maybe somewhat. I feel like it's something that I try not to talk about too much, because I'm not sure if too many people are super interested in the science of color theory. But I have a tattoo on my arm of RGB kind of overlapping. So it is something that's really important to me, and I am open, especially at work, to try to talk about it. I've done a presentation recently, actually, a couple months ago, about design and art. It's just really short, kind of part of a presentation, but
I try to at least make it come across that the color is important. So I feel like if I can get that point across to the developers that it is important the colors that you choose and that can make a huge difference, then I feel like at least they'll pay more attention to the colors that they use. So I think that's probably the best way to go about it if you're working with like a team of developers.
Yeah, one of the things that I think we always come back to and have to really hammer home is the accessibility of color.
Yes.
Just this week I've been redesigning forms so that they use like the lowest grayscale, for example. Mm-hmm. That's something that is up to us to educate, but also something we need to be consistently doing to make sure it gets through.
Yes, definitely. Just making sure people are aware even. I feel like that's a big thing, that people just aren't aware that color can make such a difference as far as somebody who maybe is a little bit visually impaired or colorblind in specific ways. And that can really prevent a pretty big part of the audience from using the website, or it can cause a lot of frustration. So I think going into it, starting out knowing that you need to make things accessible, or having a good base level of how accessible you want it to be or what target audience you're looking for.
And right now you have to be like super duper careful because my girlfriend's dad actually got sued recently for having a site that wasn't accessible. I mean, most of it, I was looking at it, like it had alt tags, it had all this stuff, so it had to have been something like crazy obscure. So stuff like this is becoming more and more important, and I don't think people realize like how much trouble you can get in, if your site is like making a lot of money and you're, not 100% accessible. I don't know about colors. That's actually a really good question. There's another guy in our chat that knows more about accessibility. So I'd be curious if you can get in trouble with colors specifically. I know you can with...
I'm sure. I think you can, because there's definitely standards as far as AA or AAA accessibility that you have to get through as far as contrast goes between colors. I know that AAA is definitely, I think it's AAA, it's a lot more difficult to do, and that's mostly government websites that do that.
Yeah.
But AA is still something you need to consider, in my opinion, building most things. Even like my portfolio, as I've been building it, I've been making sure that all the colors are accessible.
So I got a question for you guys. One last question, and then I think that we have to wrap this up. And I think this is a fun one. What thing about color just like pisses you off that like makes your blood boil? You're like, man, every time this comes up, it makes me want to flip desks.
I have a really weird one. So, red and green are complementary colors.
Sure.
But they're also Christmas colors.
Yeah.
So I feel like you can't use red and green and make it not look somewhat Christmassy. Like, it's really difficult, and that pisses me off. I wish I could use red and green without it looking like damn Christmas. Anyway, I get triggered by that.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Oh, that gets me.
What about you, Louis?
For me, it's generally that the colors go in trends like everything else, and you feel that you have to follow a certain pattern that's popular at the moment. And there's the mindset of, I really don't need to be doing this. I can design it how I want. It's my product. But then you slip into I'm going to go get some inspiration for this thing, and you always end up making it look the same.
Yeah.
How about you?
That's a broader problem.
Yeah. No, that's very true. As far as me with colors, I think in general, like, I always think that I'm being like super innovative. I'm like, yeah, I'm using all these colors and this and that. And then I'll get this like brilliant layout. I'm like, nobody's ever used this color before. I feel so awesome. And literally like 10 minutes later, I'll be on like Behance or on Dribbble or something. And there'll be like 14 pieces with this exact color palette. And I'm like, who uses green and purple? Like, who does that? Apparently everybody. We all had like the same idea. So that's mine for me.
Oh yeah, no, I guess
that's reassuring.
Too. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's actually we use that in our app too. So that's a good color combination.
Steve.
Well, I want to thank you, Martha, so much for coming on the podcast and your experience and telling us about your design life, about all your love of colors, all that good stuff. And Louis, of course, he's on the other side. He's also the host with the most and not on the West Coast. I don't know. I'm so bad at alliteration. I'm sorry.
That was a really good introductory wrap up.
I think you need to stop.
Yep, and with that, we are calling it done.
All right, thanks guys. I appreciate it.